Hi, welcome to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Thanks for joining the conversation. It's another episode of the Mimi and Greg Show. I have missed my dear friend Greg Rucka, who has been traveling for work on the Old Guard 2, attending Comic Cons in Europe, and finally getting a little bit of vacation time. I enjoy hearing about Greg's travels and the wonderful humans he meets on his trip. We discuss gratitude for fans and how special it can be visiting a country of your ancestry. Lazarus comic fans, you will not be disappointed. Even though we barely scratched the surface of Risen 7, there are spoiler alerts ahead, and we have a really great conversation today. The world we live in today and the landscape of Lazarus are scarily similar. We discuss some very provocative questions regarding mortality, government, and morals. 51 episodes later, it's wild to think about how Lazarus started it all. My love for Lazarus and Greg's writing has brought us on this remarkable journey, and I'm forever grateful. For those that don't already know, Greg Rucka is a New York Times best-selling author of hundreds of comics and nearly 24 novels. He's also the writer for his critically acclaimed and award-winning film, The Old Guard, starring Charlize Theron. I'm loving these conversations and hope you are too. If you are, please rate my podcast on your platform of choice and share it with others. If you would like to support with a donation to help keep this podcast going and support the work I do, you can become a patron of the show by visiting my website or patreon.com/Sifu Mimi Chan. For comments or suggestions, reach out on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan. Now on with the show. Hello, Greg.
Hello, Mimi. How are you?
It's our reunion. I feel like
I'd say a reunion makes it seem like
so long.
It's been years. It hasn't
for
been
us,
years.
it's like in Mimi and Greg time, it's years.
Mimi and Greg time. We are our own time. Okay.
We are, because when I'm used to talking to you so frequently and we have a hiatus, it's like, longing for Greg.
Hopefully I'm home for a little while.
Yeah. So, how were your travels?
They were many and varied.
Yes.
And there were some really spectacular stops along the way.
Yeah.
I had 4 days in Poland, in Łódź, which was terrific. Mm-hmm. I had a little over 2 weeks in London, or in England, I should say, including going up to the Lakes Comics Festival.
Yes.
In Venice. Got to see Michael and his bride there.
Nice.
Got to see Mike Perkins. Got to see a lot of really cool, talented, wonderful people from all around the world. Make some new friends there. Spent 6 days in New York, most of them in a hotel room because I tested positive for COVID. So that was fun. And then I came home. Finally. So, it's been a really long time when your Mac, when you open it, is giving you the message of this is the last time you ran a time machine backup and you're coming up on triple digits, and it's like, yeah, okay. I gotta get home.
I thought you were going to say when you can't remember your password to log in. Cause I was
No, I can remember my password to get into my computer just fine.
Sometimes I'm going, what is this one again? I'm like, wow, this is a good vacation.
I'll tell you the one that embarrassingly got me a couple of years ago. I was traveling and I was trying to withdraw cash from an ATM, and for the life of me, I couldn't remember my PIN. It was gone. It was just not in my head, and I was doing all of the wrong sequences, and it shut down the card. And I was like, well, that's really embarrassing. Right.
I swear there's money in this account.
And it wasn't even like, it wasn't even an 8-digit, right? It was at that time just a 4-digit PIN.
Yeah.
And I could not for the life of me remember which 4 digits it was because there are too many fucking pins in my life.
Yeah.
So talk about needless stress. So.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, I realized and remembered that Jen actually joined you for part of the trip because I did a
she
belated.
came
I
out to
feel
London.
bad. I had a belated birthday, email to her, and she's like, "Actually, I was in London for it, so it was nice." And it was.
She actually wasn't
vacation.
in London for it. She flew back on her birthday.
Oh, okay, but it was close.
Yeah, but the birthday present was she and I had almost precisely 20 years after the first time we took a vacation together. We had effectively our second vacation a month. So
right, I was going to ask you. I was like,
it's been 20 years between the two. So yeah.
All right. Well, it shouldn't be another 20. So.
Oh God, no.
That's just way too long. Because now the kids are all grown up, so it's not like you're tending to,
Yeah, that's spoken like somebody that's spoken like a human who doesn't have children. One of them's coming up on 23. Yeah. One of them is well on her way to 20, and it doesn't matter. Every day is worrying about, and they don't have to do anything. What I meant it's not because they're asking for it.
You don't have to feed them. I'm like, you can actually they come back and know they'll be home. They can feed stay themselves. Home alone, kind of.
They know they know how to bathe themselves.
I know the worry doesn't end.
Yeah.
But I meant the vacation thing should be easier because they.
Though I got to tell you, going anywhere right now, again, I don't think Marla's ever going to forgive me.
Oh well, Marla, I always forget the Marlo factor.
Yeah, no, she is.
Yeah.
So she's been entertaining. She and I are trying to get back into the routine of things. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you got to make it up to her.
We're going to make it all right again. So yeah. So.
Oh my goodness.
But no, it was excellent. And I can't recommend, like LICAF was the festival in the Lakes District.
Okay.
The Lakes International Comics Festival. And it was amazing. Oh. It's sort of like, I mean, the founders and sort of runners make no bones about it, sort of being inspired by Angoulême, and it has that feel. You are moving around this beautiful little town on one of the larger lakes in the Lake District. I think it's Lake Windermere. And the venues are around the lake, but you are moving through the community. And it was really, it was one of those things where I was like, okay, oh yeah, I could absolutely see doing this annually. This is a beautiful place to go. Nice. And then the festival I did in Łódź, and it was my first time in Poland. And the thing about that, it was very strange. I was only there for 4 days. And everybody I spoke to who wasn't from Łódź was like, "Oh no, this is it's not a great city. You need to see Krakow. You need to see Warsaw, because this is a young city. It was a designed city from the 1800s during their Industrial Revolution, but I loved it. Yeah. I mean, everybody was wonderful. It's a great looking city from what I saw. Yeah. Really well designed. They are opening a comics and interactive fiction museum that will probably be up in the next year. That is amazing. It's going to be outstanding. And then I had the benefit of my grandmother came from Łódź. So I had, and I expect you've experienced this, when we've talked about your travel, right? Of being like, no, I'm standing in a place that we came from. Mm-hmm. Like my mom's mom left Poland when she was very young. Yeah. Moved to Paris en route to New York, via Ellis Island. So it was very interesting. And travel like that, like, you go to England, you go to Rome, you are aware of, or you should be aware of sort of these places, in the world and the contemporary status. You go to Poland right now, and they're like, "Hi, we live next door to Ukraine, and we are in living memory a communist country, right? Like that is still very present in the psyche, And when you're there talking about comics to a community that in the main had no access until the 90s. And then all of a sudden, here comes Spider-Man and here comes Batman, all of these things, because prior to that, all the comics were put out by the party to promote the party.
Yes.
Right. So they were
comics.
they were James Bond-esque secret agent story about how to rat out your neighbor, and
suggestive material.
Exactly. It's an interesting, it's an interesting mindset, and it's neat to see. And when you think about it in those terms, there's something really beautiful about being there, and the way all ages are. There is earned pride at what has been endured and what has been achieved, and invested concern in where they're going.
Yeah. I would find also that there's just a deeper sense of gratitude for where they're at now, right? Like having not had something in your collective memory of like if someone comes to you, they were alive in the 90s and maybe before, like not having it, then having it. There's like a kind of a difference than, us Americans who have everything at our disposal all the time.
Well,
everything's
and
available.
Also,
like there's a real difference in meeting, I think, people who have that type of experience.
And also, I mean, where we stand in history, and this will come out after the midterms, and God only knows. And I mean, God only knows, because we have had hundreds, literally hundreds of MAGA right-wing Trumpist fascist candidates saying literally, if I lose the election, I will not abide by the results. Right. So, I mean, literally, they've already said the election actually doesn't matter unless it gives me what I want. Right. That's where we are.
Yeah.
If you look at that, America, sure, there have been wars. We have had civil unrest. We have had, I guess, what we would refer to as, really in the aggregate, sort of requisite societal pain. Mm-hmm. But Poland is the furthest in Eastern Europe I've gone. And when you are in Poland, you are aware, in the same way that when you're in Italy and you're looking at your hotel room, across the street at a building that literally still has these scars from the Second World War on it. Mm-hmm. And underneath those scars are ancient Rome. Mm-hmm. You look at Poland and you go, communism was just the latest, right? That
was just the most recent.
Right. Like the 20th century wasn't particularly kind. Yeah. In that sense.
Yeah.
We have been, and I'm not sure how much of a difference it would make in the collective American psyche, with this country being as big as it is, and as relatively young as it is in the grand scheme. But the remarkable stability that we have been able to enjoy for so long, I would argue it's we have taken far too much for granted as a result. So
Yeah, agreed. And of course, we've talked about that before.
We'll have time to talk politics after the election.
Oh, definitely. And we'll have a whole episode for it because I feel Rucka rants will be due and ready to go.
Look,
it's funny.
I'm not casting predictions right now. I'm just so furious at mainstream media and the way things are being covered. It's like,
agreed.
You guys are once again doing their job for them. And, this is how we got Trump last time. So,
look, it's a dangerous game. It's a dangerous game. But I hope everybody
will have voted.
Yes,
that's all I can say.
That's all we've been pushing for it, right? So that's all we can do. But I really love the imagery that you painted for me of like you standing there where you have like ancestry and you have connectivity and just kind of having that rooting. And even if it's just like a moment, right? I'm sure there was a lot more reflection because that's how you are. I'm not terribly introspective. It was a moment. I don't think so. I disagree. I feel like it's not like you have to sit there and like journal all day about it, but I feel like just even having that moment, tasting food in the country of which, right? Like just like being there and absorbing that culture is really spectacular. Like I love hearing about those moments. It makes me so happy. And it makes me so happy to hear that you had a positive trip because a lot of times your trips are so work, go. And I love that you got to experience and take a moment for yourself and that you liked cons, first of all. Like it's been a while since you've spoken positively about cons. So this is like this is good. I like this.
As a digression, I like cons.
Right.
I don't like American cons.
Okay, got it.
I know. I have real problems.
We had that whole episode on it.
Yeah, I'm not sure we ever did. I'm not sure if it ever made it onto a podcast, but
yes, we talked about the treatment and how differently you're treated at these.
I'm a commodity for Fan Expo and for all of they don't give a rat's ass. About me, and they certainly aren't looking to do well by me or to take care of me. They want me to. I'm an attraction. I'm a Ferris wheel. And it's like, you know what? You're going to treat me like that? Go fuck yourself.
Exactly.
To be a guest at a con, she's never going to hear this. Polish is a notoriously difficult language to speak and to learn. Right. And I'm pretty good when I travel internationally. At least I'll get a couple phrases written down that I can sign in books. And so I had one for Poland, just one. Like I managed only one. But because of that, like the show had effectively, she wasn't my handler. She was my guy. Young woman, early 30s, named Alex. And she was the person responsible for making sure I got from point A to point B to point C. So I was doing, I did 2 signings a day and a panel and this and that. And you do the signings and and again, it's one of those things where you're like, okay, look, they don't get a lot of people from the U.S. doing signings here, right? But the realization after and I had it after the first day, Saturday was the first day of the show. Alex and I were walking back to the hotel and I sort of had this moment where I was like, and what had happened was we were walking out of the venue. And it was like a mile and a half back to the hotel. And as we're walking out, we go through, there's a pedestrian walkway and you go sort of underneath the road and you come up and there's a big bus stop and a whole bunch of the con attendees are at the bus stop getting on buses to go, and this is public transport. It's not like these are chartered buses, right?
Okay.
And Alex and I are talking, why a young woman runs up and says, thank you so much for coming. Right. And she had, I guess, been in the audience of this talk I had done. And I said, of course, thank you. You're welcome. She goes off and I see she's with a group of friends and they're all giggling that she had run over and done this. But I'm thinking, you walk away from that and you go, it is really easy to forget when you are sitting in your basement office for weeks on end, talking to people who don't exist in your head and trying to get their actions down on a page and trying to do so in a way that will tell a story that will entertain and hopefully provide more than just amusement. Mm-hmm. That when you're doing that, sometimes you are reaching into a life that you just can't even conceive of. Mm-hmm. Right. I don't know what she had read by me. I don't know what mattered. Right. I had three young women in a row at one of these signings, all of them named Kasha. Right. And they were friends, right? They were all laughing about it. The three Kashas, which is, I guess, a in Poland at least, a shortened sort of nickname for Catherine.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So, it's like a Kate, Katie, and Catherine, mm-hmm. right? They're all Kashas. And they were so excited that I had used the name Kasha in Wonder Woman with Nicola, right? Like that was a thing. And because when they said, can you make it as Kasha? And I was like, yeah. I said, I love that name. I think it's such a beautiful name. And they said, yes, we know, you put it in the book. and that's tiny. That's popcorn kernel tiny.
Of course.
But there are three young women in Poland who love reading comics, and that was a thing for them. You know what I mean? And it's important. And this goes to something larger and maybe, a little squishy, but I do something that publicly interfaces, like professionally.
Oh, yes.
The purpose of the work is to share the work. But all of us move through our lives affecting other lives in ways we cannot even imagine. And at distances we cannot even imagine. And the most negative take on that is you didn't wear a mask and you were infected. Mm-hmm. And you're not wearing a mask and passing the infection on to this person led to them infecting this person, which led to them losing their parents. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
Like that is an example of a very negative connotation, right?
Yeah.
But the positives that simply come from, saying thank you and meaning it, or not losing your temper when, you're dealing with somebody on the phone, or, as small as look, this person is clearly in a bigger hurry than I am. Take my place in line. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You don't know. You just don't know how that radiates out.
Yes,
how that matters.
Yeah. I love films that do that too, that kind of give you the sliding doors thing. Like if you just missed the subway, but this could have happened. And Oscar always takes the positive thing. If I'm like, traffic, he's like, or, this took so long. He's like, yeah, but that's great. It means you didn't get into an accident. You were before the accident or after the accident. Like, that's why we're waiting in traffic, because we weren't in the accident. I'm like, stop being so positive.
So I've talked about this guy, Mark Evans. He's the producer. He was, he was boots on the ground producer for Old Guard 2. And he has a phrase And that comes out a lot during production, which is most things work out. So most things work out. And that is a great way to live. But at one point I was thinking about it and I was like, you're right. You are absolutely right. Most things do work out. But if the thing that didn't work out was the landing gear locking on approach to the airport, that's a whole different scale of shit not working out. You know what I mean? Yeah. Most things do work out. But sometimes the things that don't work out are pretty vital. They needed to,
Yes. Leave it to you to logic into that.
Leave it to me I think there is genuine merit in reminding ourselves that most things work out, because the extension of what I am saying is, but you have to pay attention. Yeah. You have to pay attention. And pick your battles. So
it's true. And the irony is Oscar's positive, but it's because he says he has no hope. So there's just like this really funny,
right.
Like,
so it's not positivity. It's nihilism. Really positive. It's nihilism.
Yeah, there
doesn't
you go.
matter.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. He's like, I'm not disappointed. I won't be disappointed in the election because I have no hope. So I can only therefore be, surprised if it works out, kind of thing. So yeah, I think there's a difference there. I see it as like stop being positive
or having a plan, or something. But
oh my God, I love it. No, but it is nice to hear that you had travels that didn't only, even though there was work involved, that there was moments that you got to share and that the Jen was there. Like that made me so happy. Like so happy.
That was real. It was really special for us. We got to spend some time together in London. We got to see a play.
Oh,
we got to.
Which play did you see?
Some museums. We saw in its limited run in the West End, The Upstart Crow by Ben Elton with David Mitchell as William Shakespeare and Gemma, I forget her last name. It's the cast from the TV show.
Okay.
Ben Elton is one of the two writers who's responsible for Blackadder. Amongst many other things. He is a terrific comic writer. And for Shakespeare's 500th, I think the BBC went to him and said, hey, do a little like 6-episode Shakespeare comedy. And apparently Elton went whole hog into his research. And you can catch, I think they're on BritBox, but I'm sure you can find them elsewhere. There's a series called Upstart Crow.
Okay.
Right. And they're wonderful. They're really funny. And the jokes play in the way that Elton jokes do. There's broad, comedy. There's really great wit. And then if you're a Shakespeare person, there's a whole other layer of Shakespeare humor. So they had been successful enough that I guess Elton wrote a stage play.
Okay.
That sort of fits in. It uses most of the cast and so on. And in this one, he's riffing off of every single one of the Shakespeare identical twins get separated. Fraternal. Right. Twins get separated. Lear is in there. I mean, it goes on and on. And nice. I really like David Mitchell as a humorist. I think he's a funny guy. And him playing his Shakespeare's great. And so, yeah, we went and we got to see that. And that was really special because they had initially, I guess, rehearsed it, opened, and then England went into lockdown. So they were like, oh, there we go. Yeah. So like the run didn't really happen. Yeah. So they then came back to do like, we've got like, I think an 8 or 10 week run we're going to do. So we managed to get to see them.
Perfect.
Yeah. That was special.
Yeah, that is special. And I mean, and I know we've talked about this a million times, but I just love the fact that you also got a chance to, like you said, you're like the writer in the castle, in the tower. You don't see people, and all creators kind of share this. This is the thing they like about cons. It's like that reminder. There's like, oh, there's humans that are reading our books,
and
they're saying
people
nice things, and also not just to hear the nice things, but also you just get to meet people, and you get to have that like human connectivity, especially the last few years that we've been missing. So everyone's always said like those are the best part about the cons, right? It's like how the fan interaction is, and that you get to also
that's the for me, yes,
sign for them, and
it's the only reason to do a show.
Yeah.
I mean, it's genuinely the only reason to do a show. And it can be incredibly rewarding because, like I say, it's easy to forget the scope and what you're doing, and to have somebody come up to you and say, I really love this is great. And to have them come up to you and say, this helped me, is one of those things where you go like, oh, I put some good into the world.
Yes. And we
don't get
we need those
validation.
reminders. Yes.
Yeah, because most of us don't have the opportunity to get that validation.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like we can every day be trying to put good in the world, but what's the metric?
Yes.
How do you know?
It's hard to kind of see how you know. I mean, as if like us sitting here isn't a metric already, and all the things that I do is literally a result of me stalking you because of the work that you do. And like,
right. Let's not call it stalking.
Basically jumping over a train. That's how I remember it. In order to get to meet my favorite, writer, I was like, oh my gosh, this train is holding me back. You can
it
hear
does
the
feel like we can never
Greg origin story next time. There's a podcast on that already for those that missed it.
I'm not. Yeah, it makes me think that we can never go back to San Diego. Like you're not going to be able to top that. So.
In my mind, I jumped over the train because it felt that way. I was like, it was the slowest train in the whole world. And it was keeping me from meeting you. I'm like, he's waiting for me now, So, but in all seriousness, and I know I say it all the time, but literally, like you sparked such a huge movement in what I do now with all the activism and Make Us Visible Florida. And I mean, if I didn't read Lazarus, I don't think I would have become active in that way, and then your encouragement of it. Like I know, and we both, and believe you me, we are all going to be signing off on Twitter very momentarily, though I know you already have, but like you actually replied to me on that, and I never go on that. And it was just like, it's so encouraging. And it just like, it really meant something. And you have made a huge ripple effect and impact in this world. If you need to be reminded, I will always be here as a reminder.
I am grateful, and I claim no credit for what you do.
I know that.
You know what I mean?
You are a catalyst.
You're the one. You're the one who's doing it.
I know.
So I am very grateful. I guess I can. The things I will gloriously take credit for is introducing you to a network of other creators that has been very rewarding for you.
Yes, that's true. That's true. But you are inspiration. So you're definitely an inspiration. And yes, the network of creators is amazing. Like did you hear the Bendis episode, by the way?
Yeah. It's funny, we live in the same goddamn town, and he and I just cannot manage to get our schedules.
Oh my gosh.
To coordinate to see each other. And so I had actually listened to it because I was, aside from the fact that I listened to the podcast.
Right, I know.
And that I am curious about, the things that people are saying when you're talking to them. Brian, I miss Brian. So it was like, I get to hear Brian. And it's funny. I saw a fraction this weekend for about an hour.
Oh, nice.
But I have to reach out to Brian and be like, okay, are we actually gonna figure out a way to be in the same place at the same time?
Yes.
Part of it is he still lives on that crazy nocturnal schedule of his.
Yes. Yeah. It's amazing.
I'm now going to bed between 10 and 11 at night and getting up between 5 and 6 in the morning.
So you get a call at 9:30.
Yeah. So he and I are quite literally like our window of intersection is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So
yeah, I was really grateful because I was like, all right, realize I'm on the East Coast time for your nocturnal schedule. So it's like 3 extra hours. Like, what's the earliest you can, swing?
You can do it.
He was so kind. But I almost died when he's like, no. I know where I stand amongst your podcast guests. And Greg leaves the country and then you call me. And I was like, no, that's totally not what happened. Like, it was really funny. Like he was ready with that one. And I was like, man, I just got called
He's
out.
a really funny guy. So
yes. He's very funny. But I thought you would love that. I was like, Greg's ears are burning right now because we're just talking about you like crazy. So your friends have been so amazing and just like welcomed me. And so, yes, that you can take credit for. But all right. Lazarus.
Yes, I noticed. I noticed you had suited up. So
I suited up. Next time I'm gonna have my sword here. Really, get into character. Yeah, next time I'll have my sword here. So, I feel so inadequate as a reader because I go into the Discord and I'm like, wow. Oh, wow. I mean, clearly, like your readers.
Yeah, there's the issue by issue read now.
And they're gone through the source book like 8 times. So they know all the details. They remember every back matter ever written. And I'm like, God, fuck, I'm really behind. Like, I don't know what's going on. I'm like, wow, I read that. And okay, I didn't see those things. But yeah, so your fans in there are amazing. And it's fascinating to read. Just fascinating. So it's a lot of fun, but obviously everyone loved 7. I'm going to say everyone because I'm just going to say, everyone. I mean, down to Spencer Ackerman, who you guys
but
beautiful back and forth between your back matter and then him going, Forever Wars.
On the newsletter,
I'm gonna call Greg out, and
I was supposed to see him.
The battle of the writers here of like how eloquent can we go? I was like, wow, big words.
I was going to try to see him when I was in New York, and it was just like you're not seeing anybody, son. You have COVID.
Yeah. What a bummer.
He and I will have to make right.
Yes.
But yeah,
But he saw you in Portland.
Yeah, no, we have at least gotten to meet in person, which was
nice.
Nice. Yeah, 7 was I mean, I think 7 was everything we promised it would be.
Oh yeah, it was like. It was gut-wrenching as always. It was intense. The action was amazing. And we did talk about it like pre-release and we got like some notes in it. But, we open with 8 playing video games, which, she has been such a joy. And then like however many episodes ago when you gave me the revelation that every 8 was 8 and not ever a flashback of 7, like kind of blew my mind because it's like, was 7 ever that youthful of a kid or was she always more somber and like serious? And because 8 has such a playful personality, like, she loves the video games, even though it's a cover, but I like the fact that we get to see this side of, the Forevers, right? That there's this like playful, even though the weight of her position is there.
It's so when we talk in terminology, right? Her name is Forever, but her name is 8, right? She's 8, and the reason I make that differentiation is they are different people, right? I mean, and even undergoing almost identical circumstances in many cases in education, personality is going to take them where they go, right? Forever has always been serious. Forever has always been, because Forever came, Forever growing up, a lot of what Lazarus is about abuse. And 8's, the abuse 8 has suffered is a different abuse than the abuse 7 suffered. The abuse that Forever 7 suffered people in abusive relationships answer it in different ways. One of the ways she tried to answer it was by pleasing others. Mm-hmm. Right? I will be what you want me to be. And one of the crucial differences between the two is that Forever was called into action very young. Like at 8's age, where she is, where we have left in the series, Forever had already been in the field for almost 2 years.
Okay.
So
she had to grow up, quote unquote, faster because the responsibility was greater.
It was literally
put
right on her.
It was just like, you're up.
Yeah. She went from this is a simulation to this is the real thing. Don't fuck up. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
And that 2 year difference is enormous in development. Mm-hmm. Right. But it also means that the abuse 8 has suffered, right, has manifested in a different way. And also she's gone through the abuse she's gone through a different kind of abuse. And we saw it with Bethany, right? If you go back and you start sort of the Risen arc, Bethany's self-loathing manifests as a sadism in a way towards 8, mm-hmm. Until she basically has until she has a mirror moment, mm-hmm. and is able to articulate to herself about mortality, right? And because Beth's change over the arc, I guess we're a spoiler zone.
This is all spoilers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this also because like she knows she might be dying? Like that brings about all these questions. Well, like, is it a bit selfish too? Right. Like, even though she's reckoning, or is it like
I don't
coincidental?
Well, she doesn't know. Beth has no idea how the arc is going to end.
Right. What I meant though, but because they were all like losing.
Well, she says to James, right? She says to James, it's not working anymore.
It's not working anymore.
And if it's not working for him, mm-hmm. then it's just a matter of time before it doesn't work for us. Right. And that doesn't lead to guilt. What it leads to is self-reflection. Okay. And self-reflection reveals guilt, reveals, this isn't her going, well, I better shape up or else I won't get into heaven.
Right. But I mean, that's the catalyst to make her start down the path of I think thought, right?
Yeah, I think she literally says to James at one point in the arc, I want to be somebody I like, and I don't like me. And I do think that mortality, and it's funny. I mean, clearly, when I am dead and gone, if somebody is really bored and decides they're going to do an overview of the Rucka oeuvre, right? They're going to hit certain periods where they're going to go like, and these are the obvious periods, right? There's always stuff that the writer doesn't know they're writing about. But clearly around the death of my father, I entered into a mortality phase of writing. All of a sudden, all the characters were characters who couldn't die, right? You get the old guard, you get Forever. And all sorts of questions come out when you're playing with that. But one of the things that, and I am not, and I make this really clear, I have made no great discoveries about the nature of life and death. All right. Like anything I found, I'm the 100,000 other more talented artists, were able to articulate long before. But I think in large part, what writers do, what storytellers do, is that they, whether they realize it or not, they're telling stories in an attempt to answer certain questions for themselves. Mm-hmm. So, and I think all of this phase of the writing sort of comes out of me trying to answer, what's the purpose of death? Right? Like, what I know, mechanically why we die and how we die. What is the purpose of a life that ends? Mm-hmm. And that has appeared thematically, not only in multiple works, it's a shrieking theme in one of the play-by-post games I've been playing for about a decade now. And one of the players in that game doesn't believe there is a purpose to death. And I don't know if that comes from a fear of death, mm-hmm. right? Or because, they've built some very persuasive arguments as to why death is unjust. But the thing I keep coming back to, and this is part of it, you see it in the Old Guard, for everything that Forever and 8 can do, they can die. We know Lazari die. They can be killed. And in the main, right, as it's been presented narratively, well, the other Carlyles can die. They simply don't, right? Because they're never in danger of being exposed to those environments that would do it. Mm-hmm. If death gives our lives purpose, right, knowing that it is going to end, begs certain questions about what we are doing with our time and what we are going to leave behind when we're done with it. And that's very much what Bethany is confronting, mm-hmm. right? Is this thing is back on the table, and this thing being back on the table now makes me look at myself and go, oh, wow, I have been so miserable for so long. I don't remember what it was like to not hate myself. Mm-hmm. And the moment she gets there is the moment that she can go back to, because Bethany, when she was young, wasn't this. Right? Bethany, when she was young, was probably more like 7. Right? She wanted to make people happy, but she wasn't in an environment where, failure meant punishment at the start.
Yeah.
She's the second oldest. She was around before year X. Mm-hmm. Jonah and Johanna are born after year X. Mm.
And in Jonah, you see it especially like, well, life is forever. There's no mortality. They just live, frivolously. Yeah. There's no purpose, right? So it's like existing versus living. And like you see it really clearly through those characters. But I found Bethany's journey very fascinating.
Yeah.
Because you hate Jonah in the beginning, but for different reasons.
Yeah. And you hate Bethany. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's but they're for totally different reasons, Yeah. And
And you hate Johanna.
Yeah, of course.
Jesus, at the start, you're like,
horrible.
These people are so horrible.
Yes. I'm like, who are we rooting for? Is this the family that we're rooting for? I'm not clear. Okay, Forever is yes. We want her to win. Yeah. But it's fascinating because for sure, Bethany was so key, and that's why I was like, oh man, this is headed somewhere rough because you're taking us on that Bethany ride, and you could feel it. And of course, there's a lot of questions in the Discord. It's like, well, end scene, like we see what happens, but there's, James is definitively dead.
She's dead. No, Bethany's dead. Bethany is dead.
And now
James
Forever's pissed.
Bethany is dead. James is dead. Forever saw it.
Oh yeah.
8 saw it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to give any spoilers for the next issue.
No, definitely
when we
not,
come back with
not.
Fallen, let's just say that in one fell swoop, James just did incredible damage to the Lazarus Project.
Ooh.
Yeah. I mean, literally was like, I'm killing the smartest person here and getting myself killed. So
all right, well, Michael's gotta show up for sure.
Let's just say that whoever is head of family when we come back, it is a problem they have to deal with.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was really rough to see because, I mean, at the same time, it's not like you're rooting for Bethany, but you actually can empathize and feel, okay, there's not that things makes things right when you understand why, but at least you can understand something, right? It doesn't justify.
How.
Yeah, you don't justify, right? You don't say, oh, well, it's okay. But at the same time, you're not rooting for her to get killed off, right? So there's like that change. Whereas when you just seen her abuse 8, you're just like, someone need to just stab her.
Yeah.
You know, you're just like so angry because you're protective
if we had gone from that to she gets shot, nobody would have been
nobody
like,
would have cared. Yeah, exactly. Nobody would care. And that's the brilliance of your writing and Michael's detail and just so much there. So I normally don't go down that rabbit hole where I like zoom in because, you know, now that we have the iPads and whatnot, you can. But everyone in the Discord is like, you know, oh, these are the things you look at. And I was curious about the Harvard letter because like the love letters are just scribbles for the most part.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing to see there. But the Harvard letter, I'm like, well, you can kind of make things out. So I'm sitting there looking at it today like, oh, what? Because, you know, I never got an acceptance letter from Harvard. So I wouldn't know what one of those looks like.
Yeah, I had to do some research.
How standard is that?
Yeah.
But To Better Our World really stood out to me.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because later on, Malcolm's huge monologue is how he basically is bettering the world, right?
Yeah, like, it was all Harvard's fault.
It's all Harvard's fault. But it's, you know, he basically goes on about he's the savior because the climate change and world collapse. And then I loved not an extinction event, not the end of a species, not the end of a civilization, but of life. And it's just like, oh, right. But, you know, it's just like kind of that kickstart of like his beginnings and his quote unquote humble beginnings and all the trials and tribulations he had. But I actually zoomed in on the Harvard letter to try to see stuff this time. And I thought it was interesting because those words were because not everything was legible in the letter. And,
but those were.
But those were.
So Michael, when we're doing things like that, right? I don't, unless I know the text is going to be crucial to the story, I won't include like the contents of a letter or something. Like you don't need to know what Leia was saying to Malcolm because anything you can come up with, and Abby's got a line about the photos, right? Where she says the sort of things that you send when you're young and in love. Those photographs are photographs that are not meant for anybody but Malcolm to see is the implication there.
Okay.
Right. And that doesn't mean they're pornographic.
Right. They're just personal.
But certainly boudoir photography level, maybe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Michael, I remember Michael reached out to me about the Harvard letters and he said, well, I need text. Can you write me an acceptance letter? And I was like, so I went online and I, you know, did a lot of searching and I found a lot of really good parody ones.
Oh my God.
And then I found like one or two. And the thing is, and you get different kinds of letters, right? Because some of these letters are form letters, right? That are just going to say, dear, you know, Mimi. Congratulations on your acceptance to the class of 20XX, right? We look forward to blah, blah, blah. Other ones very clearly are individual, right? Like Malala did not get a form letter. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That um and neither did Malcolm. And neither did Leia, for that matter.
Okay.
And neither did Jacob, at MIT. These were and this is meant, in the confines of the narrative of the world. The truth of the world is these are three remarkable people, right? And there's a hunger and a drive, but there's also, in a capitalist system, a desire to commodify and to control that. And places like Harvard absolutely promote the idea that you come out of Harvard and you are part of the ruling class of the country. Right. And that's noble because it is service. Right.
Yeah.
We will help you to do great things, and you will
better
do them
our
better
world.
and better. Right. Like the way Facebook made the world better. So
there's about 50 podcasts on that, people, if you want to go back.
So
yeah.
What I find interesting is, and I haven't gone looking, so I don't know. Malcolm's declaration is written to be absolutely correct. Like, he's not saying anything that isn't true, that isn't manifestly in this moment in 2022, 100% true. He's not making anything up. That's his read on the terrain. And it is a valid read of the terrain. And his active decision at 16, 17, 18 to be like, I am going to change this. I will fix it. Because nobody else is doing it. We are at this moment. There's a clock in Manhattan that literally is counting down how many years we have left until the climate is irrevocably fucked. 6 right now, 6 years. Okay? Yep. 6 years. Nobody's doing shit. And if the economy is the number one factor for voters, well, they're going to be really surprised when there is no economy worth speaking of in 6 years, right? But the media has done a great job of making sure that it's the economy that matters. They've done a terrific job of saying that, and not the
inflation.
Fact that literally the world is ending. It is literally ending. Like, every climate report in the last weeks were like, oh God, it's worse than we thought it was. There has not been a single report that said, hey, you know what? It's not that bad. They have all said it is worse than we thought and happening faster.
Yeah.
And I bring you back to our initial conversation, I think, before we went to recording. You guys have had hurricanes before. Never like that. Guess what? They're all going to be like that now. They're all going to be like that now. Right?
Yeah.
Malcolm is not wrong. Right? Malcolm's wrong is in how he chooses to try to solve it.
Right.
And presuming that he is in the fiction, as smart as he is, and presuming in the fiction that he in that moment is telling the truth, then the method he embarked upon to do it was to him what was required to succeed.
Yeah, necessary. Yeah.
Right.
I got that.
This will do it, which means he discarded another 100, 200, 300. Now, in a world where Elon Musk bought Twitter and then immediately proceeded to do exactly what everybody fucking knew he would do with Twitter, right?
Yep.
A Malcolm Carlyle who says, oh, I have to fuck the rich so hard that I can get them all in the palm of my hand, makes a lot of sense. A world where he goes, I've got to take the Bezos, right, and fill in the list. And I have to get rid of everybody else and compress them down to a manageable number so I can snuff them out. Right?
Yeah.
So you have sort of this weird hyper-capitalist, predatory into feudalism stance.
Yeah.
That is arguably the vector by which Malcolm is hoping to introduce global social. I don't know. I mean, I'm not, or I should say, I do know. I'm not going to say, but
yeah. I mean, I'm going. Oh man, it must have been hard, but not hard for Greg to write this because it's like, well, here's what's happening now, and like I know you feel like we're headed there, and it's because just
that's what it was meant to be, right? Yeah. I mean, it's always meant to be. It was
meant to be a dystopian future, I thought, but instead it's like life imitating art.
Well, it's a dystopian future if we only ended dystopia, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But we're going to have 12 to 14 issues in which to land this plane, and when we land it, we will see. Look, I mean, if you're expecting rainbows and unicorns in the last issue, you will be sadly disappointed. But I am not gonna go out on. I don't care if this is a spoiler. I'm not gonna go out on. It's all pointless. You're screwed.
Right.
I don't believe that. Personally, and I'm certainly not going to write it. Mm-hmm. We can do hard things.
Yeah.
And we have done hard things, and we will do hard things. The question is, when are we going to come together and do it? Mm-hmm.
I know there's not going to be unicorns and rainbows, and there's never any unicorns and rainbows at the end of any of the issues or the arcs, but there is hope, which is something we talked about earlier too. And it's interesting because even though, you have this way of bringing out a lot of darkness and a lot of turmoil, there is still we haven't seen a lot of the resistance lately. We haven't seen this. And the thing is, we just don't know also. It's like, oh gosh, this is the time of what we're speaking of in Malcolm's time, right? And it's like, how will 1,000 years from then look back and was Malcolm wrong though to take those people? You think of Genghis Khan, and it's like he was this horrible human being who just tore apart so many countries, but then they're like, well, but here are the things that happened as a result of blah blah blah. It's just crazy how we can look back at historical things because we're so far removed, again, to the conversation earlier, we forget so quickly. Yeah. And it's like, well, but those, that had to happen during the war, and those people had to die. And I'm like, but those are still people. So it's just all these questions that don't really have answers, right? No. Of was he wrong? Yes, he was wrong in the way he did it, but man, maybe
was there another way to do it?
Was there an alternative? No. Yeah. Was anyone else doing it? Right. And it's kind of where we're at now, like you said. So it's just kind of mind blowing.
Yeah. You look at the Supreme Court, all the stuff that's come out about Thomas, all the stuff that's come out about Clarence Thomas, right? He shouldn't be on the court. No. In any sane working system, he would have been removed by now.
Yeah.
Drastic drastic times call for drastic measures.
Yeah.
I recognize we're wrapping up for the day.
Yes.
But it's going to be real interesting the next time we talk, because we're going to see how drastic the time is and what people have done. We should maybe next time, because there's a lot to unpack in 7. So if you want to throw out open questions or whatnot.
I will do that, because I feel like our Discord friends are much more in depth than I am, and have all these wonderful things to ask. So yes, let's do that. Let's do another episode where we throw out some questions. So listeners of this, please start writing them down, and then Greg and I will curate and
yes, we will go through them
and have an episode so that we can. There's so much to unpack. Literally, I got through 2 pages with you. So and I mean 2 pages of the actual comic, and I had written a few notes, but I was like, oh, you know how we are. I mean, hence episode, what are we on now? 51. So so we tend to tangent, and we do well. So as always, a pleasure, Greg, and listeners, get those questions to us about Lazarus, and there will be plenty of Greg Rucka in the near future.
Very cool. Take care.
Say hi to everyone.
It's nice to see you again. My love to the family.
Mwah. Okay.
All right. Bye.
Bye. That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Please subscribe and rate my podcast on your platform of choice and leave a review. You can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/SifuMimiChan to help keep this podcast going. Follow me and interact on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook.